All right, hey guys, in today's video, I'm going to be giving my 1 month review on Guitar Center's studio lessons. Now, if you missed the first video, make sure you go check it out. I went on their Open Studios Day where they give out free lessons, and then I decided to sign up for a month of lessons to give my honest review of what lessons there are like. Now, if you're curious about my background, I have worked at a number of different private instruction music schools. I've worked in different capacities, sometimes as a front desk receptionist, scheduling the different instructors, making sales calls. I've also worked as a personal instructor, private one-on-one, as well as having assisted school owners and their recitals, as well as their, kind of group lessons with, PK. And then I run my own lessons that I have, beginner guitar workshops for adults specifically, because I have a heart for those individuals trying to learn an instrument later in life. So I wanted to give my honest review and let you know what my 1 month at Guitar Center was as an intermediate musician. One thing I should add is that I tried out lessons with piano and guitar, and so my lessons are coming from having tried 2 different instructors. Okay, so we're gonna start with the pros first. You always wanna start on the positive side. And I have 3 pros that I want to give for lessons at Guitar Center, and then we're gonna get into the the cons. All right, so my first pro for taking lessons at Guitar Center is that you're at Guitar Center. You're in a store that has tons of equipment. Not only that, but there are people there that share the same interest and passion as you. In between my lessons, I was able to walk around the store, try out different instruments, practice my music, find different books on music that might interest me. And I found that when I practiced my music in the store, some people would actually come up to me to network, to find out what things are happening in the music world, where they could find live events, which is perfect because I host a lot of them. And so this is an absolute pro of taking lessons at Guitar Center. You're in an environment that supports what you're into. There's even an old school community board in the back where I was able to post, my business card or QR code stickers and find other listings of what bands are looking for. So my first pro is going to be you're at Guitar Center. The second pro is not something that I was able to benefit from, but something I noticed with other students taking lessons is that you don't have to own an instrument in order to take lessons at Guitar Center. And so I would see some of the instructors go out and grab an instrument for their students prior to their lesson. And that could be considered a pro if maybe you're just trying to get your feet wet and you're not sure if you want to make an investment in an instrument just yet. I also do think this could be a con though, because you need an instrument at home to practice and to really make sure that you're retaining the information and that your body is starting to learn how to work with your instrument. But overall, it is a positive thing that they have all types of instruments there. So maybe one day you might want to switch to electric guitar as opposed to acoustic in your session. You could do that without owning an electric guitar. So overall, that's a positive. All right, and then my final pro is going to be that they seem to have pretty open availability. There were times where I needed to switch my lesson around and there was availability to do so. There was even the option to try out different instructors, which was not something that I wanted to do because I wanted to grow a rapport with my particular instructor. However, I do think it is a positive that if I wanted to try out or sub with a different instructor, I could do that. And sometimes you find a better instructor that's a better fit for you. So those are my 3 pros for lessons at Guitar Center. Okay, now let's get into the cons. So I have 5 cons. I'm going to be completely transparent about the things that I saw at Guitar Center that I think overall as an intermediate musician, as an adult, just do not work for me. And this is where you can sit back and sip your tea. All right, so the first con is going to be that you have the option to book 30-minute or 60-minute sessions. I went with the 30-minute sessions, and the reality is these lessons are not actually 30 minutes in total length. In fact, I noticed that some instructors started maybe a few minutes after and wrapped up a few minutes sooner, which was very foreign to me because when I've taken private lessons myself or even given private lessons, 30 minutes is never enough. You always have the temptation to go over. Oftentimes you don't have enough time to get through all that you want to, and you have an idea of where you're going to pick up next week. That was not my experience in any of my Guitar Center lessons. I felt like the instructors were watching the time, often waiting for the time to be up. So that makes you feel very uncomfortable. In fact, one of my instructors, I mentioned to her that the time on her clock in her room was a little bit different than the time out in the lobby by a few minutes. And she didn't seem surprised or shocked by that news at all, nor did she change it. And so to be completely honest, I felt like this is a way for her to kind of speed up the time, is what it felt like. And they would, oh, time's up. It was like they were ready to get through it. And so with the lessons starting sometimes a few minutes late with one instructor, I had 2 lessons, by the way, I should mention. I had piano and guitar, so 2 different instructors. But I found that my instructor, not only did she not change that, it just almost felt like that's how she wanted it to be. And so, it makes you feel really uncomfortable in a 30-minute lesson if they are waiting for the time to be up. So that would be my first con, is that the lessons are not actually 30 minutes to be exact. They're more like 25 minutes, maybe. Some cases 24 minutes, because they're starting a few minutes late and at other times ending a few minutes early. Even if you had more questions or things, it's just kind of like, oh. So I did not like that. Second con is going to be, and maybe this is something that I should have listened to during my trial lesson, because both instructors let me know that they prefer beginners. However, these are the instructors that I was assigned to. I didn't choose my instructors. And they both communicated in their trials at some point some hesitance of teaching someone that already had some type of musical background. As Maya Angelou says, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. That throughout the lessons, it really felt that that was their preference. And to be honest, it almost felt like they prefer that because they can coast, because they don't have to answer a lot of theory questions, because they don't really have to get into the depth of learning other music that you're interested to. I had one instructor who was great playing by ear, so she was open to the idea of you wanting to learn specific songs. But I had another instructor that no matter how much I said, hey, this is the song that I wanted to learn, which I said in my trial lesson, I really had to advocate for that by the 3rd lesson of like, okay, can we please get into the song I said I wanted to learn? It felt like with one instructor that she was kind of frustrated by the number of things that I already knew. And so the first 2 lessons felt more like her trying to figure out what I did not know, but not from a place of wanting to teach, but just kind of from a frustrated place. So it kind of felt ego driven of like, what's the thing that I can find that will trip you up? And then once she found something, there were no intentional sense of like, aha, let me teach you these things, as much as it was like, aha, finally, I found something. And so that actually leads me to my next con, which is that it did not feel like these instructors had any background in teaching or education. And I've worked at different music schools, so I know that that's not a requirement. In fact, most of the jobs I worked at, they ask you a simple theory question, and if you can answer that, then you get the job. But that can be pretty problematic when you have instructors who don't know how to relay how to do something. When I was in high school, I had this teacher, and anybody who went to my school remembers Mr. Mertan, and he taught calculus. And the thing that was so funny about Mr. Mertan, and that people still laugh at to this day, is that Mr. Mertan knew calculus, but he could not relay to us as a class or as students how to do calculus. And so he would get very frustrated. And if you run into anybody from my high school to this day, we yell, "Out!" Because that's what he would yell. And he would put us out if we challenged him and asked him questions that he could not answer. And that was the energy of these lessons with both instructors, to be honest. It was giving Mr. Mertan out. And so what happened in calculus is that a lot of us actually with Mr. Mertan coasted by and got decent grades. But when we made it to calculus level 2 with Mr. Seven, reality hit us. And actually, Mr. Seven pulled me aside and a friend and let us know, you might want to switch to a different math because you're struggling already and we're just getting started. You don't know calculus. Let me just be honest with you. And so that's similar to what was happening here, is that it almost feels like they don't know how to relay some of the things that they know per se. And there was a frustration if you would ask theory questions or technique questions. There was not really much background or experience on their end or training on how to relay that. Without me saying it, I felt like I had to kind of shrink, and that's not really what you want. I've had great instructors throughout my life who have been confident in who they are and their approach to instructing, and that just was not the case here. So this leads me to my fourth con with the Guitar Center lessons, which was that they have curriculum books that they can teach through. Most schools do. Guitar Center, however, is a corporation, so they have their own books. I was totally open to buying those books, but they were not available most of the month that I was there. They did call and leave a message about that, and they could order one and have it shipped to the store. But as far as buying it in store, the days that I needed it, it wasn't there. And also, to be honest, I felt like the book is a crutch for the instructors. And so we would flip through the instructor's book and there would be certain things that would excite me. And I'm like, oh, I would love to learn that. And because she didn't know it, she would keep going. And so it's just a very weird energy around these Guitar Center books, if I'm being completely honest, where they are a crutch with one instructor, but it also was a distraction because without the book, then I couldn't really go with her approach to teaching. And if she wasn't really, that excited about learning what I wanted to learn, it was kind of odd. When I instruct, I do a method of your turn, my turn, meaning we will learn in the beginning one song that I think they should learn to lay a good foundation, and we'll work on that until they get to a good point. And then the next song they get to choose. And so I'm learning something outside of what I probably would choose to learn and taking the time to make sure that I can instruct them in that. And there was not that your turn, my turn, his and hers, or hers and hers, since I had women instructors, which shout out to the women. And that made it feel very one-sided. My last con is going to be that this is clearly a gig, and there's no judgment there. When I have taught music lessons, I knew that I had a goal in mind, and that was to get debt-free. And I would remind myself, as soon as I get debt-free, I won't prioritize instructing like I have in this capacity. And so I understand you got to do what you got to do to get by, but it very much felt like this was a gig that they dreaded. In fact, one instructor called out sick one day while I was there. It was the day after 4th of July, so the store opened late. Everybody was outside waiting. Whoever was in charge of opening the store clearly overslept. The instructor called out sick, and I'm like, are you sick, or you just don't want to be, were you partying? And these things happen. I get it. We're musicians. But the passion for making that connection for a student, I did not feel that for me. Maybe it's there for a younger student. Maybe it's there for a beginner student. But I really felt with one instructor, there was a lot of insecurities that I had to sift through. And with another instructor, I just did not feel like she wanted to be there. She was super talented. She's ordering DoorDash while I'm doing scales. And it just really did not feel like I was a priority. And so overall, I would say I do not recommend Guitar Center lessons for that reason, even as a child or a beginner, because you want someone who enjoys this. I still remember my elementary school music teacher, Mr. Michael Sales. If you're out there, Mr. Michael Sales, holler at me. I don't know where he is, but he had such a huge impact on me. I met him at the age of 5. First grade all the way up to 5th grade. And he poured his passion for music into us. I learned about so much that I would have never known about as a little black girl then. But we learned about the Beatles, we learned about Beethoven, we learned about classical music, and we would sit and listen. And he was so passionate, so we would get passionate. Then we learned about Earth, Wind, and Fire. We learned about so much, and we had to not only take in the music, we would perform the music. And there's so many different things that he taught us, and it was an overflow of his love and passion for music that poured out to us. And that impacted the rest of my life. And so would I say I recommend guitar lessons? If it's a child, it's just to give her something to do, him something to do. No, you want instructors who are so passionate, it bubbles over to them. Like I said, I taught lessons because I just needed the extra cash at some point in time. But I also had a genuine care for the nurturing and cultivating of this student's artistry. And I did not sense that from Guitar Center. So my rating is going to be a 2 out of 5 for Guitar Center. And those 2 stars really just come from the fact that it's Guitar Center. There's a lot here. It's a dope place to be. But overall, I did not see the value. Now, their price point is a little bit lower than a lot of other places here, but then again, you get what you pay for. I really don't want to go to a lesson where I feel like I'm being tolerated, you know? And so I didn't take my cameras to any of those lessons, so it wasn't that. It wasn't about filming. I really think it was just I had too much experience. And I had too much experience. If you have a lot of experience and you need just the accountability, like I was thinking, I just need the weekly accountability to remind me to pick up my instruments because I do so many other things. That did not give me that. So that's my truth. If you've taken Guitar Center lessons before, hit the comments and let me know what your experience was. Maybe it's a little bit different. Maybe I just needed to try out different instructors. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And until our next adventure, I'll see you later.